Chili here, welcome back to ROM hacking. In the last video we did some adjustments for missile weapon attacks and also handling, critical rolls, natural 20 and natural 1. And I said, yeah, I was gonna test that stuff, and I did test it, and it works pretty well, except I forgot to remove the original sleep test here. So it was doing the sleep test before my stuff. That wasn't good. So we got rid of those bytes and we just kind of skipped them now. And it works perfectly fine. One little difference I made, probably easier if I show you the git diff here. So before, if the target was sleeping, it would always hit as long as you didn't roll a 1. But now, if they're sleeping, it's not guaranteed to hit with a missile weapon. With a missile weapon, you can still miss. And that makes sense, and that does jive with things that I've read about the rules, where if the target is prone from sleeping, you get a bonus from the fact that they're unconscious, but you get a debuff from the fact that they're basically, they're hunkering down. They're lying down flat, makes it harder to hit them with like an arrow or something. So it makes sense. So that stuff's all tested and it's working ship shape. And I redid all my comments here, so everything's all commented up again. Now let's move on here. One thing that I definitely want to check is I want to see. Okay, so now we've handled the combat calculations pretty well for the tactical system. What about for the combat in dungeon? Okay, so we're at a default party in the dungeon here. Let's set a couple of breakpoints at the beginning of the hit calculation and the beginning of the damage calculation that we have. And the first thing I want to test is, does it use the same calculations for in the dungeon and in the overworld? It's logical that it would, but it's not guaranteed. So let's come in here and up. So right away we hit our, where are we at? 27E. So that is our hit calculation. So let's press F5 and we go to the damage calculation. So it looks like, first of all, we scored a hit. And second of all, it appears as though the same routines are being used in the dungeon as in the overworld tactical combat. And that's great news, right? Because that means that we don't have to, reverse engineer a whole new set of routines. All right, now this discovery does raise another question. If we look at, for example, this THACO table here, we got a reference from our melee accuracy routine. That makes perfect sense. We got two references. They look to be about the same place. So there's another routine that's referencing THACO. What could it be? And if we look at it, we can see that this basically looks like the routine that we just reverse engineered. This is, looking at the class, trying to figure out if it's a fighter, if it's a cleric, whatever. Here it's doing the roll. Here it's adding bonuses. So there's another combat routine here. I don't know what it's being used for, even if it's being used for anything. Maybe this is just a relic. And it's not actually live code, but I have no idea. It's just interesting. It's in here, but it's not from what I can see, it's not being used from the dungeon combat, which is what I originally sort of assumed. All right, so there's one more major issue left that I've been kind of dreading handling here. I've been avoiding it a little bit, but let's just create a default party. And this is with patched ROM, of course. And let's go save game. Yeah. So it just freezes when you try to save the game. That's a bit of a problem. And the paranoid side of me is like, oh crap, they've got some kind of like copy protection going on here. Because I haven't changed anything relating to saving the data. My brain's going like, what? Are they like checking certain specific bytes in memory, and if you don't match like some checksum, it just hangs the game whenever you try to save? Oh no. So, and I don't really want to have to now reverse engineer copy protection and basically crack the game. So I'm like, okay, well, but after a while, I thought about it. So the original cartridge ROM is 1 megabyte. And then I made our extension exactly 1 megabyte size, just so I don't have to resize it every time I do some changes in Ghidra. And then after that is where the SRAM is located in memory. And that should be fine. I talked about this before, but if your ROM overlaps with the SRAM, there needs to be special, the software needs to do special things switching between normal running state and the state of accessing the save RAM. And because the game originally didn't have that overlap, it probably doesn't have that code in there. So we don't want to introduce an overlap because then I'd have to rewrite all the code that accesses the SRAM. But we're not overlapping, and yet we're getting a problem. But if we look at Ghidra, so our memory map has the original ROM going 1 megabyte, our extension using the second megabyte, and then it has this 64K of RAM. And what I suspected was that when I was exporting, it was just kind of jamming this RAM in there, even though I don't want to. And one of the things I noticed when I originally exported the program, this destination file size, that's not exactly 2 megabytes, right? Like if we look at the program here, that's 2 megabytes plus 64 kilobytes. So it's definitely tacking the RAM onto the end. And where is that RAM going? It's going right in the place where the SRAM should be. So we can't do that. And I looked it up. I don't think Ghidra has a good way of like marking these memory regions, which ones should be exported or not. There's no option like when you export program to this. I can't click on the options. There's nothing I can do. So the way to do this, I guess the easiest way. So we're just gonna try to save this as a copy in, the Ghidra's own, not in the file system, but in the Ghidra's own namespace. Wotes patched pubes.md. Then we remove the RAM. Then we export. We'll just name it Wotes patched so that my shortcuts work. Yeah, I'll overwrite that. Now we see it's smaller. Good. And now when I run this mother, I should be able to use default party, save my game. Yeah, it works fine. Works fine as long as you don't have that RAM in there. And let's just do a quick reset. And then when we go back to the title menu, we should be able to load our game. Okay, so beautiful. That's actually fixed, and it wasn't nearly as bad as I feared it might be. And all we got to do now is when we're exporting, we got to make sure that we don't export the RAM. I mean, it's not going to be a problem either way because when I do the full export, I'm not going to make it 1 megabyte for the extension. I'm going to size it down to just the size necessary. But yeah, just something to look at. We don't want that RAM in there anyways, just garbage. So good stuff. Easy fix. And that brings us to where we are now, which is version 1. I believe we are now ready for version 1 of this patch to be released. I got plenty more ideas, but we're gonna release what we got right now, and then we'll see if I want to do any more. Now I got to figure out exactly how I want to deliver the patch. There are different formats that are typically used for this. In the next video, I'm going to show you what I've chosen, my general flow of creation, and a walkthrough of how to actually apply the patch to your own ROM if you so desire. And what's in the cards for the future now? Well, I'm going to play through the game with my patch. I'm not going to do like a full Let's Play with commentary or anything, but I will record it and I'll like put out some summary videos, recapping just me going through the game a little bit, just a few highlights here and there. I won't put those videos in this playlist. I'll probably put a short video that links to the playlist with my highlights of the playthrough. But as I'm doing that, I'm not just going to be playing the game. This is not just all fun and games for Chili. I am going to be setting up a bunch of stuff in the debugger. I'm going to have a whole debugger script that I run whenever I start the game. And we're going to do lots of stuff in there. We're going to be watching the statistics. So I'm going to be watching when things like intelligence, wisdom, and charisma are accessed, because I want to know like where is the game actually looking at those, because it seems like it's mostly unused, which to be fair does kind of jive with the original rules. These stats are kind of crappy ones to begin with, but I want to make sure that they are at least being used in the places where they should be used, or whether they're just completely useless stats that you should just never put points into. The other thing I want to do is I want to watch for free memory regions. I want to see what parts of RAM the game is using and what parts are potentially free for me to store my own stuff in there. Typically I think I should be able to find some space between the stack and where it starts, allocating global data, because there probably is a little buffer region there. So I'm hoping to find some space that I can kind of use. But, I have to basically run the debugger watching candidate areas, playing through the entire game because, I might do a short playthrough, find some pieces in memory that haven't been used, but they're actually being used in some rare circumstances. So I got to do at least a full playthrough to get a degree of certainty about what memory regions are probably available. Another idea is I might be able to use SRAM as my actual RAM for my extension, but we'll look at that in a different video. I also want to set breakpoints in a bunch of, question mark areas. For example, that melee accuracy routine, that copy routine, the doppelganger, when is it, if ever, actually being used? I want to know that. So I got to set a breakpoint, play through the game, and see when we hit that breakpoint. There's other mystery conditions, things that are like, so something happens when a certain bit is set, but I don't know what that bit is or what situation it pertains to. I set a breakpoint, then I will know what the context is where this thing happens. I can guess what the bit actually means. So I'm going to be setting breakpoints in places like that. Other things I might try to do while I'm playing through the game is I might try to see where saving throws are processed or if they're actually processed at all. I want to investigate what happens during level up. If it takes into account things like, there's something called, I think it's called prime requisite. Basically, if you have like a fighter, if you have a high strength, you should get a bonus on your experience. If you have a low strength, you should get a disadvantage. And same for like a magic user. They should get an experience bonus if they have high intelligence. So this is another place, this is one place where intelligence might actually have a use. But I want to see if it's actually doing that. And, as I use spells in the game, if some of them seem off, I might investigate them and see if they're doing what they should be doing. And just, general stuff as I play the game. If I see something that looks weird, it's like, this can't be right. That'll give me another thing to look into. So that's what I'm doing while I play the game. I already have goals set for the future. Even without that, I want to fix the save scumming with the magic wand. And I want to fix the missile spam in the dungeon. So as the game is, you can just basically mash the A button in the dungeon. You give everyone missile weapons, you mash the A button, and everything just dies. It's like you got a freaking Tommy gun when you really have a sling. So those are two things I definitely want to fix, but they're going to take a lot of work, and they're probably, at least the wand save scumming thing is going to require me to find some place in memory where I can persist some data. I also have some other ideas about not strictly just fixing things and, removing exploits, but actually rebalancing. This is a more sticky area because now this comes into my own personal preference and my own stylistic choices will come into play with this, which will probably rub some people the wrong way. But, this reverse engineering is, it's hard work, and a boy's got to have a little fun every now and then. A lot of the races or the classes in this game, their advantages and disadvantages, they only come into play when you get into high levels, like levels above level 15 or a level 12 or whatever. And that doesn't really apply to this game so much. So, for example, the differences and the disadvantages of an elf versus a magic user, they don't really come into play until the higher levels and the higher level spells that elves don't get to access. But in this game, that doesn't apply. So basically, there's no reason why you would ever take a magic user over an elf. They're just strictly better. They level up slower, but that's barely nothing because leveling up is exponential anyway. So you're only ever behind by like one level. So I might look into ways of like how I can maybe rebalance this stuff, but we'll see. The other thing is like there's lots of useless attributes like intelligence, probably useless, charisma, almost certainly useless. I could think of ways to like change the game a little bit to make it so that those ones also have some reason for you maybe trying to put points into them. So just stuff like that. I might think of ways to rebalance it that don't exactly follow the D&D rules, but in the context of this game, which is just a single campaign, will probably make the choices between the different classes a little more interesting. Basically make every class viable in its own way is what I would like to do, and also give every stat a reason for existing. But yeah, that's about do it for this video. Stay tuned for the next one where I'm going to walk you guys through the patch and how you guys can get your own freshly minted version 1 patch of the Warriors of the Eternal Sun. Until then, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please click the like button. It helps a lot. And I will see you again with some more ROM hacking.